U.S. Senator Tammy Duckworth sits on the Armed Services Committee. She said today that she will block over 1,000 military promotions from clearing the Senate. She will block everybody on the list unless she gets written assurances from the Secretary of Defense that he has not and he will not block Colonel Alexander Vindman's promotion. Senator Duckworth said in a statement, quote, "This goes far beyond any single military officer. It is about protecting a merit-based system from political corruption and unlawful retaliation." Senator Tammy Duckworth is an Iraq War veteran. She's a Purple Heart recipient like Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. She's in her first term as a senator from Illinois. She is also reportedly on Joe Biden's shortlist as a potential vice presidential running mate. Senator Tammy Duckworth announced today that she is threatening to hold up the confirmation of more than 1,100 military promotions unless and until Defense Secretary Mark Esper confirms that the Trump administration will not continue to retaliate against Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman for his testimony in the impeachment. There have been recent reports that the White House has been pressuring the Pentagon to essentially take Colonel Vindman's name off the list of officers who are set to be promoted. Senator Duckworth is taking direct action to try to block the White House from doing that. Joining us now is Senator Duckworth of Illinois, a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, veteran of the Iraq War, a Purple Heart recipient, former Assistant Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs. Senator Duckworth, I really appreciate you making the time to be here tonight. Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for covering this issue, Rachel. It's so important for our military.
Let me hear just from you directly why you think it is so important and how you decided to approach it in this way that you are.
Well, the military is supposed to be an apolitical organization. It should not be politicized. And I've watched under this president that he continues to politicize the military, and most recently by using helicopters to suppress peaceful protesters in Lafayette Square. And in this case, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, if he's on the list, has earned his way to the list. In order to get on the promotion list, you have to have been recommended to be on there by your rater, your intermediate rater, and your senior rater. So 3 officers above you have to concur that you should get on the list. And all I'm saying is that if his name is on the list, his name should not be taken off by the DOD, and that it should be allowed to go forward with his name still on the list. I'm afraid that the White House is pressuring DOD to take Lieutenant Colonel Vindman's name off the list after he's earned his way onto it based on his job performance as he was evaluated by his supervisors.
Do you have any response in hand as of yet from either Defense Secretary Esper's office or more broadly from the Defense Department? And what are you expecting them to do in terms of responding to what you've announced today?
So all I've asked them to do, Rachel, is very simple. All I've asked them to do, certify by letter that if his name is on the list, they will not take it off the list before they send it to the White House. That's simple. Basically, I'm telling them, don't politicize promotions of military officers. Don't let this White House politicize this process. Their response was promptly to politicize it by accusing me of holding up the promotions of thousands of officers and all of this stuff. They immediately responded by being political about it. And all I was saying is just send me a letter and confirm that you will not take his name off the list if he's on it. That is pretty simple to do.
Senator, let me also ask you about another, right now, just jaw-dropping divide between the president, what appear to be the president's interests and the interests of the U.S. military. I know that you've been briefed, along with other senators, about what's these intelligence reports that Russia was apparently paying bounties for American bodies, paying bounties to Taliban fighters and others in Afghanistan to kill U.S. troops. There's been open source reporting in the Washington Post and elsewhere that the intelligence community believes that, in fact, those bounties were paid because some American soldiers' deaths were initiated because of that Russian program. The White House apparently believes, the president apparently believes that there is no response that is necessary to this. I just have to ask your take on this and how you think this will ultimately resolve.
Well, the way it will resolve is if the administration actually starts conducting an investigation into whether or not bounties were paid for the death of American servicemen and women. The briefing that I received just the other day from the Department of Defense was by people who were not the ones that could answer my questions or any of the questions from the senators on the Armed Services Committee that were in the room. We asked them some simple things such as, do you know if the president was briefed on February 27th, as the open source reporting says he was on these bounties? They said, and they had no information on that. The folks that they sent to talk to us were not people who could answer any of our questions. They did not send Gina Haspel to talk to the Armed Services Committee. They did not allow us to talk to General Miller, who is the U.S. Forces Commander in Afghanistan. We didn't get to talk to anyone who would actually shed light on this. But I think it's very telling, Rachel. The fact of the matter is that the president cares more about the naming of U.S. bases and of keeping their names from dead Confederates than he does about whether or not Americans were killed with bounties placed on their heads by the Russians. And he's not said anything about it. He hasn't even bothered to come out and comfort the families of our fallen heroes by saying that he's going to look into it. If anything, all he's done is deny, and plead ignorance. And we know that he was briefed. I mean, the reports have shown that he was briefed on, it was in his presidential daily brief as early as February. And if he did not pay attention and has done nothing about it, that is dereliction of duty, as Vice President Biden has said.
Speaking of Vice President Biden, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about these reports that you're being seriously considered as a potential running mate for Vice President Biden. I know you're not going to answer me, but I'm just going to ask you anyway. If you can tell us whether or not you are in those discussions, and if this is a job that you'd like to do if Vice President Biden asked you to join the ticket.
Rachel, I'm all about serving my country. And whether it was in the cockpit of my Black Hawk or in the House and now in the Senate, our country is facing some really dire crises right now. And we need to be able to dig our way out of it. I believe that Joe Biden is the best person. He has the empathy, the understanding, and the ability to bounce back and help this nation to bind our wounds and to face and to come back from them and to lead us out of the mess that the Trump administration has put us in, what with COVID-19, with our economy, with our military overseas. And so whatever it is that I can do to get Joe Biden into the White House, I will do that. They have their process for the vice presidential selection vetting committee, whatever that is, and I'm going to leave them to it. I'm just going to focus on doing everything I can to get Joe Biden elected because he's the kind of person with the resiliency and empathy for the suffering of the American people that we need right now.